And initiate sequence.
I'm home.
Memories are made of this.
What is this place?
I was programmed to protect you. And now, we start again.
I don't give a damn who's down there. Kill them all!
Give it to me.
Hello everyone and welcome to the second masterclass hosted by the SA Film Academy in 2023. My name is Cindy Mkwanazi and I'm the training manager here at the SA Film Academy. First off, I'd like to send a special thank you to Clive Pollick, of course, our special guest, Jonathan Healy Hutchinson, Cheryl Etok, Marisa Sonoman-Turner, the team at Riff Raff, Netflix, Film Africa, and especially hello to the Mixita and thank you for your sponsorship. And of course, thank you to all prospective art department trainees and industry professionals for joining us today. And I will be your host. Thank you.
I have worked as a set designer, I have worked as an art director, I've even worked as a production designer, and I've worked as camera and sound and all sorts of departments in my career. But my main job, and what I'm going to talk mostly about today, is construction for movies. And that will lead into the course we've designed, which is a course on set design, designed to get people into the art department in trainee positions. And I will talk about the course at the end of this talk, and I will talk about possible career trajectories for those interested in joining the art department. Most of what we produce, because of the movies you work on, and actually, truthfully, movies that are made all over the world, is sort of Eurocentric. It's either directly European looks that we're reproducing, or it's a European view of the rest of the world. And that would include the European view of Africa, or the European view of Asia. It is what the market is, and it is what we do. And the people that design and work on these movies are mostly based in the Western film business. And it has nothing to do with their personal color, creed, religion, anything. They're working and they come from an education system based in the West. And so we're producing stuff that is Euro-based. It's just a fact of what we do. And I will also say that what we do is always pure fiction. It doesn't matter if we're making movies about historical facts or so-called historical facts. We're making fiction. And so even if it's a story about a king of England or Shaka Zulu, or it's fiction, because the movie is designed to entertain, it's designed to grab an audience, and to do so, facts sort of become irrelevant. But having said that, we do base what we do on historical design as far as we can, because we have to have a starting point. We have to have something to base something on, or we'll be floundering. What are we building? Well, we don't know, it's fantasy. But even fantasy movies, and there are some here that we will talk about, where they're pure fantasy, not based on Earth or not based in any real fact, they're also based somehow in real stuff, real architecture, real design. What I'm actually going to do is really just show you pictures of movie sets that were built, and in some cases show you the designs like this of the set before it was built, to give you an idea of the scale, the sort of work we're doing, and I'll try and explain why we did what we did in some cases. In other cases, you're just going to have to see for yourself. Everything I show you will have been built by my team. And when I say my team, I do not work alone. I work with a large team around me, and I work with every other department on the movie. And so this is not a one-man show. This was a recent, a few years ago, a remake of the series Roots about the slave trade, in short. And this was a design for a village in Gambia. We couldn't shoot in Gambia for reasons that we don't need to go into here, but we did shoot, and we built this in KwaZulu. And this was the design actually drawn by a guy called Jonathan Healy, who is going to be one of my main co-teachers on the course we're going to do. And the reason I'm showing you this is that unlike architecture, what we're really interested in is how things look, not how they're made necessarily. I'll get into that in more detail just now, but that's the design he did. And often that's the extent of design we need or will get to make our sets. We don't get what architects get or give. We don't need it and we don't want it, and what we want is clear information. So that gives you a very good view of the sort of thing. And that is designed after many discussions with all sorts of people, directors, producers, cameramen, every department, on what they need to make the movie. What are the scenes they need to cover? What are the angles they need to cover? I'm just going to show you, these are the sort of sets that were put up from those drawings. Now, I don't have a lot of photos, but you get the idea. Now, I've always considered myself a building forger, in the sense that I want to forge buildings. I want you to walk onto the set and think you're in a real thing that it isn't real. And I'm quite perfectionist about that. So, and just as a painting can get forged, we forge buildings. Now, it doesn't matter if that building's built of chewing gum. As long as it looks like the building, then I've done my job. As long as you can walk into it, walk out of it, it can do whatever is needed to be done on the movie, then I've done my job. And the art department job is to give us the information needed to come to the design. We then work very closely with them to try and come up with materials that might work or might not work. And together, we produce that. Now, all the objects you see in the town are not me, or that, well, sorry, I'll rephrase that. That's a different department who has to dress the set decorating. But we often have to make stuff they can't physically find. So, for example, that bed there, we might have made that bed because they just couldn't find one that worked. But that's not really mostly what we do. Mostly what we do are bigger structures. And I suppose the set decorators would be, in real life, more like interior designers in a sense. They fill the building with stuff. But it's not quite that simple. Again, if we do the course, we will talk about all that stuff. Now, this is obviously African architecture. And it's quite accurate to the sort of architecture that would be used in Gambia a few hundred years ago. But it's quite accurate, not totally accurate, because totally accurate is not necessarily the right thing for the movie. Totally accurate in some cases could be too rough, too hard to film in, too low to film in, there are lots of reasons why the real thing doesn't work, and I'll talk about that as we go through. But this is the version of Gambia that we built for the movie. So this is another job, it will be in a sec, called Labyrinth. This was a job, it doesn't matter who it's for, it's a sci-fi job actually, although it doesn't look like one, a sort of fantasy sci-fi. And in this case, we had to reproduce a town in France called Carcassonne, but in the 12th century. And in the movie, we see 12th century Carcassonne, and there's a sort of time travel element, and we see modern Carcassonne. Now, modern Carcassonne, we shot in Carcassonne, in France, because there's no reason not to, and it's obviously looks real, it is real. But medieval Carcassonne doesn't exist anymore, and so we had to build it. And again, that's one of the reasons we build sets. They simply don't exist unless we build them. But so this is the design, again, by the same designer who's going to teach on our course, Jonathan Healy, who's working under a production designer, but it's the simplicity and information we get from drawings like this that allow us to build the sort of sets we do. So without this sort of drawing and the information, we couldn't produce what you're about to see. But this, as you see, is medieval French architecture. Now, while we're looking at this, I want to bring up something else about the prospective course. We need students who come into the art department, not students, trainees, to have quite a broad knowledge, because when we start talking about medieval France, we can't have a bemused look on the student. What does that mean? So part of what we're going to teach you on the course is how to research stuff that you don't know about. And if you do know about it, all the better. But we will teach you how to research, how to find information that you don't know about, or how to find architecture you've never heard of before, or a style you don't know about. But it is important that we base stuff in reality, and this is very much based in reality. Obviously, this town didn't exist like this, but the sort of architectural features in the town, the sort of construction methods in the town are real. They did exist. In some cases, you can find them in bits, but not how they looked then. So this is what we built. There is the town we built from those sort of drawings. Now, this has got the added bonus of being still from the shoot, so it's obviously got characters in the movie which make it look all the better. And you can see there Well, for me, it's a very good set. It's convincing. It looks like the real thing, blah, blah. So this, now, you might say, well, what's it made of? Well, in some cases, it's made exactly as they made things in the Middle Ages. It's made of timber and straw and mud. And in some cases, it's made of modern polyurethane foams. What it's made of is not as important as that it looks right. And the information I need to do my job is references, really. And often we get those from the art department, and we also give them to the art department, showing them what is possible to do. So that's why it's a cooperation. The roof structures, the rock work, it's all quite authentic. Now, this was built at Cape Town Film Studios. And just to let you know, it's built on a hill because the town of Carcassonne's on a hill. There wasn't a hill. So part of our job was to build a hill, quite a big hill. So first we built the hill, and then we built the town on the hill. This is a sort of construction they used a lot in medieval Europe called wattle and daub. It's actually used commonly in Africa too, where you basically get sticks and cover them in mud. But it was used in medieval Europe. It's still used to this day all over the world. And in some cases, we'll go to great lengths to copy it. This is detail from the doors and the doors themselves. We have to make new timber look old. This is not old timber. This is timber we have made to look old. And this is not old steel. It's timber. It's steel that we've made in our own blacksmith shops. So we have very extensive workshops, very extensive skill sets, and we can do anything, actually. And you'll see in this talk a great range of the sort of things, from super sci-fi to old and rustic. Now, talking specifically to students who are interested in being in the art department, it isn't necessary for you to know how to make that out of steel, but it is necessary for you to know that it can be made by other people, and how long they might take to make it, and what we need to make it. What do I need to make that? Well, I need a drawing. How specific does the drawing need to be? Well, we'll get into that on the course. But it can't just be made. Or do we just tell the construction department, go do what you like? Not really, not very often actually. We expect to see drawings of pretty much anything that the camera needs to see, and then we can deliver it. More of the same. So in here you see a lot of furniture. That furniture did not exist. You can't buy medieval French furniture around, so we build it. We look at references, we look at old books. We use a lot of books more than the internet, actually, and I'll get into that in the course. We find old photographs, and then we copy the furniture. It's all quite easy when you know what you've got to do. More of the same. I don't make the swords, but some department on the movie do make the swords. You can't buy swords, you can't buy helmets, really. They don't exist, and if they do, they cost millions. So we make them. Everything can be made if we have to make it. Okay, so this is a movie called Beyond Borders. That was made actually in Namibia, I can't remember when, almost 20 years ago probably. And in this movie, it's the story of aid workers in a famine in Ethiopia. And we had to reconstruct a town in Ethiopia called Lalibela. And the way we reproduced the town is we had, again, same designer. And the reason I'm deliberately using his designs because he's going to be the teacher. And I want to show you how simple things can be, but they can still get built. I mean, he's highly skilled, which is why he can draw this simply, but we don't need much more than this and some photos of buildings, and then we're building. So this is Lalibela, and again, another drawing of his. And with this, we'd have some reference pictures taken in the town, as high-res as we can get them, and we would, in short, then build from this, with laying out the town and other stuff, again, to be covered in the course. And then this site is the site in Namibia where we built the set. Nothing was there when we arrived, nothing at all. This was a bare mountain, and then we proceeded to build a reproduction of the town. Now, this isn't the same size as the town, it's not the same layout of the town, in Ethiopia, I mean, but it is the flavor of the town, and that's what we were interested in. And everything you see was built, and in this case, built very quickly, in 9 or 10 weeks, start to finish. So, and then you can see that we're using techniques that are used all over, but this is my crew building. This is not anyone local. And there's that one house that you saw the drawing of. And as I say, everything's built. The tin arrives to us brand spanking shiny new, and then we make it look like that. Now, in this case, the designer, a very interesting man called Wolf Kruger, he wanted a very specific plaster. And the way we did it was to go and get cow shit and mix it with mud and plaster it, as it's done. Because it gave a look that was hard to fake by any other means. Now, we don't care what we got to do as long as we do it, so it wasn't a problem. And no one in my crew objected. They liked achieving the look. So we went to a dairy and picked up piles of cow shit and mixed it with the sand and made plaster, which is how it would be done right there. And so the buildings are not necessarily actually fake. Most of that building is real. You can be in it, it's waterproof. In this case, it wouldn't have had power anyway, but it has power, and it doesn't have plumbing, it never would have. So I think you get the idea. And the sort of people that work with me are expert carpenters, steel workers, painters. Every sort of skilled craftsman works in my department and in other departments to achieve the set. There's a good example of the cow dung plaster. And it would be very hard to fake without, or to build without. This is the inside of the church. This is a town that has churches and mosques for some reason. I think there's quite a mixed population there. And these are the sort of ancient type of paintings they do on the walls. There we are. You see the textures we can get. Now, the designer might not know what we can achieve. So often we have to, we're talking to him all the time, and he's saying, well, what do you think we can do on the walls? What textures we get? And then we make samples to show him the textures we can get. So that's how we're working with the art department to come up with the design. It's not something that's spec to us. So this is Blood Diamond. I don't know if anyone's seen it. It was quite a big movie, but it's sort of irrelevant. It was about mercenaries and blood diamonds in Sierra Leone. And we had to build an open pit diamond mine that was supposed to be in West Africa, but this isn't West Africa. This happens to be in the Transkei, and this is built by us, including the trees, the buildings, the pits, everything. Not the big forest, but the palm trees in the middle. And this is an action movie, so a lot of it's built for actions, for explosions. We do a lot of stuff that you can't see, which is built for special effects or stunts, buildings that need to explode. How do we make buildings that need to explode? Because if we blow up real buildings, people will get hurt. Well, we have to build buildings that you can blow up that won't hurt you, and we can do that. It's not really a design issue there. That's more when my department cooperates with other departments. But any of those buildings could be built by us and were built by us to be blown up without hurting you, and you can stand close to them. So this is, now, just to give you a bit of history there, when we arrived, this is a pristine valley in the Transkei owned by the people of the valley. They give permission to film there. The deal is made with production. I'm not involved in that. We move in, and then we have to destroy their pristine field. But part of what we do is to renovate it afterwards, which we did. So when we left again, this place was rehabilitated. Everything was replanted, grass was laid, or whatever the plants were originally. That's how it looked when we left. I don't have pictures of that, but believe me, we left it pristine. In fact, probably better than it was, because we removed a lot of the aliens. Part of the team I work with is a greens department, landscaping. So we do the landscaping. Part of construction in movies is, because we work on an American system, is landscaping. So the palm trees are brought in by us, the mounds of earth are us, everything's us really in this case. There's slightly more close-ups of this. And this is based on pictures of the architecture of the place with a fantasy element, because we need an open-sided thing because it fits with the script, it fits with the action. We need to interact with people and we need to see them as we do. So we're not copying buildings 100%. We're copying them with the script in mind. Again, we will cover this on the course. Just more close-ups of similar thing. Now this is in Maputo, same movie. We made a lot of it in Mozambique. We built that building. It's in the middle of the city center of Maputo, but we built it because it has to blow up. And it has to blow up when people are running through the streets. The streets did not look like that. These were tarred streets in Maputo. We made them look like that because we wanted it to look like Sierra Leone. So then we blew it up. And what you see flying there, or looks like concrete, it's not concrete. It's made of special foams that we use so that if it hits you, it won't do you any harm. And we had Leonardo DiCaprio crawling around in there, and he wasn't getting hurt. Actually, we had to put rubber mats on the floor for him that looked like the concrete. But we won't go into that stuff. And then that's afterwards. And then we'll come and take it all down again, and it will look like we were never there. Now, I happen to have fabulous painters, so they can make things look like they belong. And I think you can see there, that's why I say we're building forges. That does not look like a movie set, it looks like it lives there. It doesn't live there. Okay, again, no more of the same. These are the streets of Maputo, and in many cases we've added, this street didn't really look like this. We've added buildings at the back, the yellow and blue, all sorts of things added there that didn't exist before we arrived. To make a war zone. Now this is the same movie on the beach. We built this village, put in the palm trees. This is a village that gets attacked by the, I don't know what you call them, warlords, who are then going to kidnap people to send to work in their diamond mines or chop their hands off or whatever they were doing. But this is the village where the hero is kidnapped, essentially. And you can see we just built it. There it is. This was my first big movie in the 90s sometime. I'd done plenty of movies by then, but this was a big one. And we built in Namibia again. Now, this was a bizarre story really about horses. It's called, I think it was called Running Free when it came out. But it was about the origin of the wild horses of Namibia. It was about the wild horses of Namibia and how their origin. And in the story, the origin is that this was a German mining town in the middle of the desert of Namibia that used horses. And when it got bombed by the British in the First World War, the horses escaped and became the wild horses of Namibia. Now, it may be fantasy, it may be true. I quite frankly don't care. But what we had to build was quite a big mining town, which is supposed to be in a German style, not an American Western style, but we did it sort of where it was supposed to take place. And so we built everything you see, including the railway lines, including the towers, everything you see we put there. And I'll show you some drawings, again, by the same guy. Yep, well, there is a bias, I don't deny it. And you can get the idea. And this is built authentically. The buildings look odd because German colonial architecture is odd. And that's how they look. So, and often things are built for a reason. That huge water tank and reservoir were built to explode. And later we blew them up. With a lot of water in them, so there was a very dramatic scene. But the railway carriages, I think the bottoms we found, but we built the rest, and there was a whole train like that. Now, often we build stuff that isn't architecture. We build trains and cars and planes and ships, a lot of ships. We build stuff that has to float, that doesn't have to float. We build water tanks, we build underwater stuff, we build spaceships, we build anything. There is nothing we will not build. If they say to me, we want you to build a plane that needs to fly, then I will find an aeronautical engineer and we will build a plane that needs to fly. There is no limit on what we will do if you give me enough time and money. Because there's an expert out there that I can employ to do it. So it's not, there is no limit, actually, to what we do, and we do it. So this is the German mining town. That's why it's got German writing on there. And then this is a drawing of what was the boss's house. Now, if any of you have been there, you'll know that this sort of architecture does exist. It's a very bizarre thing, but it does exist, and it's there in the middle of the desert. And then there's that town called Kolmanskop that was swallowed by the desert when the Germans left, and we had to copy that, which you'll see in a minute. So this is some of the drawings, and then there's the actual house. Now, we had to build the house complete. This brings me to another point. I don't often build sets that are flats like these. We don't do this sort of work. This is not what we do. What we're building is mostly full things. Four-sided rooms you can walk into, rooms you can climb up the steps into. Sometimes it's double-story, triple-story. We're building, it's more fake whole buildings than bits of buildings. Sometimes it's not, but it often is. So this is a complete building, and it had a complete interior, which we could film in, walk into, walk out of. Now, the reason for that, again, I can't go into too much now, but on the course we'll cover it. Sometimes you need the ability to walk in and out of a building with the camera. You don't want to cut from the inside to the outside. It might not work for lots of reasons. It just generally works better to be able to see daylight that's real daylight, if you can, and can afford it and all the other things. But this one, and then later, after the war and when the horses are now roaming free, which I think was the name of the movie, but running free, then this house is now taken back by the desert, as it were. So we had to copy the Kolmanskop look, which is where that town has been abandoned, and then the desert sand has moved in. So we truckloads after truckloads of sand. We destroy the buildings, we create those broken walls, and that's what we get. And that's the look of it. So that's a picture of our set, but it could be a picture from Kolmanskop, if anyone knows that place. But It doesn't really matter. So this is the first of the very big jobs that went on for more than 1 year, where we spent a lot of money, employed a lot of people, and where sets are actually still standing. Now, this is the original drawing. Actually, it's not quite the original, but this is more a concept of what the town needed to look like. It's not a building drawing, as it were. This is to sell the look to producers and writers and showrunners and whoever else needs to decide, networks, to say, this is what we're proposing to build for the movie. And this was supposed to be this town of Nassau in the Caribbean in about 1700, when it was actually ruled by pirates. There was almost as free anarchic state in the Caribbean, and this was the head of it. There was no real government, it was just pirates. There was nobody in charge, and it was the Wild West, literally. But this is how pirates lived, in theory. And this is a good example of where what we're doing is not fact. So this is a movie about pirates. As in some cases in the movie, the pirates have names of real historical figures. When the movie was talking about coming here, we had meetings before they ever got here and made the decision, and we were discussing the things we needed to build, and we needed to build pirate ships. And I did a lot of research, and other people did, that showed that pirate ships were actually very small. Pirates didn't sail big ships because big ships are slow, you need too many crew, they're expensive to run, and they're not good for what you're doing. What you wanted to do when you're a pirate is to chase big ships with small ships. And big ships being ships, cargo ships, not warships, because cargo ships weren't very well armed. And just like off the coast of Somalia now, you chase a big tanker with a speedboat, and then you board it, and then you take the ship, and off you go. And the producers and showrunners said, that's fantastic, Clive, but actually we want big ships, because Errol Flynn in the 1950s always had a big pirate ship. And that's how people think of pirate ships. They're big ships. So I said, no problem, then we'll give you big ships. It's not historically accurate. It cannot be, because it doesn't work to tell a story. It might be very boring if they spend all their time in a tiny little boat chasing big ships. You can't do much in the big boat. And the same goes with the town. The town has a flavor of the real Caribbean of 1700, but it's not quite glamorous enough if we build the hovels people actually lived in the 1700s. So we have to build this town. And there's the sort of plan view. This is what we actually built. There's the view of what we built, which was how we'd laid out what we were going to build. And you can see that some of the walls are just facades and some are complete buildings, because the facades are not part of the real action. We need to see people walking past them, but we're not going into them. But there's a tavern, there's a brothel, there are a few different governors' there are buildings we need to build completely, and those buildings we did. And these are the sort of drawings we used. And these sets, in a way, are still standing. They've been overbuilt at the studio, but they're still there, really. In answer to, do we take them down? These are the core of buildings that are there still. More of the same. And some of these were an adaptation of the medieval set, because it's on the same site, that I showed you earlier. So we repurposed those and made them look like this, which you'll see in a minute. But and that's obviously, and then this is what we actually built. Now, we needed a beach, and we needed a Caribbean Sea, which is this beautiful blue color. And the way we did that was to build a big tank and line it with white sand. Now, whoever knows or doesn't know, if you've got white sand under the sea, it makes that water blue, turquoise. That's all it takes, by the way. So when you see beautiful pictures of beautiful places with turquoise water, it just means they've got sand bottoms. That's it. There's nothing special about it. So that's what it is. That's what we built. Now, the palm trees are fake. We can't get coconut palm trees in this country, not down here anyway. So we had to build those as well, which we did from scratch. And the boats that you see, we built all of them. Every single one of them we built from scratch. Now, these are boats that still exist at the studio. They're actually, this one's floating in the water, but it also can drive out of the water, be on the hard, and rock from side to side. Again, we do that. It has sails that can be used. And for that, we brought in specialist ship's riggers. I don't normally have sailing riggers in my crew, but for this job I needed them. So we find them, they bring them into the crew, and they make the ship's rigging. This is a sort of almost lost art, but not quite. The rocks look like the rocks at Boulders or Odekral or somewhere on the coast, but they're not. They're polyurethane rocks we made. So we take molds all over town, and then we reproduce the rocks. And this is just before the water clarified, so it's a bit milky, but you get the idea, I think. And then this is in the town. That happens to be the brothel. and the tavern, and etc. And then my greens department come in and they dress everything to look like it's tropical and overgrown. It has to look tropical. So there's the governor's mansion. Just historically, the town had been a British outpost that then was taken over by pirates. And then set decorating will come in with the mirrors and the lights and the benches, and in this case, we did very little for them because they could actually find a lot of this stuff to buy all over the place. I don't know where they found it. There is one of the rooms in the brothel. Quite a nice room, really, if you like that style. And the whole thing is supposed to be rotten. It's supposed to be damp and tropical. That's why everything looks run down. It's supposed to be falling apart. And a lot of these references actually came from a book on Cuba, a massive, beautiful book on Cuba showing Cuban interiors that are slightly rotten now, that have been left for a while and start to, because of the tropical heat, they start to degrade. And that's what we copied to get this look. The designer loved the book, and that's it. Okay, so you see all the moldings up in the ceilings. We make all that. Either we buy it if we can, or we carve it and make molds and reproduce it ourselves. As I say, there isn't anything we can't make if we don't have to. That is a prime example. We needed 18th century carriages. They don't exist here. So we found plans somewhere in some museum and copied it. We made it from scratch, every bit of it, every wheel, every bit. Those are our workshops. There are some of our painters. An interesting point, there are quite a lot, most of the guys who work for me are men, but there are quite a lot of women too who work mostly in the paint department, but in all departments. It's not a closed shop to anybody. If you want to build stuff, you can work in construction. It's not closed to you at all. This is a sugar mill on the same job. We build a lot of ships for Black Sails, and we still continue to build ships. I've built dozens of ships in my time, but for Black Sails we built, I think, 4 or 5 ships. One couldn't float at all and didn't move at all. It was far too big. It was 75 meters long, and it sat on the hard, and it's still there at the studios. In fact, they all are. And the others, including something that was about 40 meters long, they were built mostly to be shot on the hard because we can't recreate rough sea around anything without using visual effects. So there is no point in trying to be at sea. It's hard to shoot at sea. I'll get to that in a minute with a different job. It's hard to shoot at sea. It's dangerous. It also takes long to get out there to shoot at sea. It's a production nightmare, blah, blah. So often we need to fake things. Now, visual effects help us to fake things. And these days, they can reproduce the sea very well and rough seas very well. And so generally, we don't want things in the water because it's just a pain in the ass. It doesn't help us at all. The water's too flat. It doesn't really look like wild sea anyway. But in some cases, mostly when a ship in the movie was going to be harbored or anchored, then it's okay if the sea's flat. And so we built the smaller ships to be on the dry. They have built-in engines and wheels, and they have flotation built in. So, and this is all from us. And we can drive them to the tank, drive them in the tank, and then they do float. The flotation lifts them above. But they don't have complete hulls because they would be far too deep then, and then the tanks would need to be far too deep. We have, and you'll see pictures of built things that go out to sea, no problem. As I say, we can build anything, and we've built stuff that goes out to sea, which I'll show you now. But these Black Sails boat, apart from the smaller rowing boats, and some of those were at least 9 or 10 meters long, they did go to sea, but the ships didn't actually go to sea. There are various ways of working in our business, but when you get to work on the sort of stuff that I work on, you're not employed as a contractor, you're employed as an employee. I am an employee, sometimes called a consultant, but I'm employed by the job. So on any of these jobs, I'm in-house. They pay me a weekly salary, and I work for them, and everyone who works with me works for them. So there's no subcontraction. I do own a company, but that company now is simply a provider of tools, actually. So, and how did I suppose the question is, how did I get to this position of trust? Well, before I worked on movies, I did many, 1,000 commercials, I think. And I suppose I got the reputation that I could build things, and I was on budget with building them, and whatever, I don't quite know how, but someone offered me a movie job, and I did the movie job within the budget that I said it would cost. So I cost for the movie, I don't cost for myself. So the movie, I get a brief from a whole group of people, not usually from one person. And then we put a costing to that brief. I say, it's going to cost this much to do what you've asked me to do. Do you want to do it? And then they say yes, they say no. We negotiate about what could be cut. But we're not negotiating about my profit. We're negotiating about what the movie can afford. Does this make sense? So we're negotiating about what the movie can afford. Within that, I get to decide what people are going to get paid to work for me, although it's actually technically for the production. And I get to decide who the suppliers are going to be that supply us. But in all cases, the suppliers and the crew bill production direct. There's no hidden cost. There's no, it's not going through me. There's no markup. Now, obviously, I'm going to get well paid. Damn right I'm going to get well paid. But that's not the point. What I get paid, they know I'm getting paid. There's no hidden anything, so it works. And that's generally the way that the bigger studios prefer to work. In fact, it's pretty much exclusively the way they prefer to work. Now, in other countries, for reasons, historical reasons, other reasons, they employ subcontracting companies. And that happens here too, but not on the jobs I work on, where a company will quote to deliver a whole set. But that's highly problematic for reasons I can't go into right now, but we probably cover on the course, because it's less adaptable. It's less, there's less negotiation on what can be achieved. It's more about, always about the money rather than about the build. So this is a movie, it was a very interesting movie to work on because it was made by a very famous man in Hollywood. He was usually a writer called Robert Towne. And he'd written quite a lot of famous movies, one of them, which you may if you're film buffs, and if you're not, you should be, called Chinatown. And I would say this right now because I'm going to talk. If you want to be in the movies, you have to watch movies because it's the business you're in. It's ridiculous not to, okay? This is directed by a guy called Robert Towne. It was a pet project which someone decided to make, Tom Cruise's company. And it starred Colin Farrell and Selma Hayek. And so it was quite a prestige job, but it didn't have an awful lot of money, and it was made as a sort of independent movie. But for the movie, we had to recreate downtown Los Angeles in the 1930s. Now, you might say, well, why not shoot it in Los Angeles? Well, because it doesn't look like this anymore. It's simple as that. It doesn't look like this. So we recreated a few streets of downtown Los Angeles on the playing fields of Pinehurst High School. So we laid roads and rail tracks and put up the buildings on their playing fields. And I think the deal was afterwards they got brand new AstroTurf pitches for everything. So they did quite well out of it. They were very happy. But the cars obviously are not built by me, although they could be. And I say that because the tram you're about to see that did move was built by me. But in this case, you could find the cars. They might have come to me and said, we can't find the cars. And then we go, okay, we'll try and work out how to build them. But they didn't. They found the cars. But every building you see is built by us. The hill at the back is built by us. The tunnel is built by us, all of it. The markers you see sticking out of the top, they're visual effects markers. I'm not an expert enough in visual effects to tell you exactly what they're for. And again, on the course, we will bring in experts like visual effects to talk about this sort of stuff and explain what they really do and what they really don't do, which I think is critical. But that's what those are, if you're wondering. And these buildings will be extended by visual effects in the movie to look higher. And just to talk about that, we generally need to build what we need to cover people in front of buildings. Because it's too expensive and unnecessary to build things if there's no action right in front of the thing we're building. But if you're interacting with the building, walking in and out, or driving past, then we probably need to build it because the visual effects is still very expensive to reproduce it if we don't. Now, in the future, there will be visual effects that's different to what it is now. But right now, we're still building sets, and I foresee we'll be building them for quite a while. And in the future, there'll be machines that produce sets, I'm sure of it. But right now, they don't. So until they do, we've all got jobs. Okay. So this is more of the same set, and you get the idea of what it is. There's a tram that moves up and down, it drives. It's not a real tram. It looks like a real tram. It's got hydraulic engines. It doesn't matter what the engines are, but it's built by us. And there's moody picture, just for the mood. Okay, the idea is a very good extra, and etc. This is part of the same movie. It's Colin Farrell's little desert house. We built that somewhere near Lanesburg. And our desert looks very similar to the Californian desert, which is the Karoo. It looks very similar to the desert in California, so it works very well. That is built entirely by us. Now, that is a set that in essence is real. The rocks are real, the wood is real. It wouldn't be plumbed and it wouldn't have electricity. So that's a real building. We just put it up for the movie and took it down again. But it's a completely real building. You could live in it. It happens to be a movie set. But obviously all the timber started off new. We made it look old. The rocks are rocks from there. I think this is going to burn down later or blow up. I can't remember what happened to it, but something like that. Ah, yes, here's another animal job. We've done quite a few. This is drawings of the farmhouse, which is supposed to be in Kentucky, in the States, which is a famous horse racing place, which is why the story is based there. And we went to Nottingham Road in the Natal Midlands to make this. God knows why, it was freezing. But anyway, that's where we were. And we built everything you see. So this is a Kentucky-style farm in Natal. And the style is quite accurate to Kentucky. Everything is real. I mean, everything's built by us. And in some cases, everything's real. The barn is completely real. And all of that's built by us. Now, some in the distance is clad by us. There's a building there, but it doesn't look like that. We've made it look like that. There's acres of, kilometers of white fencing, blah, blah. All the trees put in by us, etc., etc. The house, the brick chimney, real brick chimney, because we wanted to have flame. This barn that's how the barn was, we're inside. We built that with timbers we found in a mine in Swaziland that was closing down, but they had all these massive, beautiful timbers. It saved us a lot of aging work. And we will do that sometimes. Okay, you get the idea. There's the kitchen of the house. I haven't got a picture of the zebra. You don't need it. But you see, we have to create gardens, often vegetable gardens. We even had to create a mealie field here, a cornfield as the Americans would call it. A cornfield, but the problem was that it was freezing, it was winter. So to make a cornfield, they had to build a giant tent and keep it heated while they grew corn, just to have a cornfield in the movie. So the extent that we have to go to is sometimes quite bizarre. And then we had to build a racetrack. And we built it on the racetrack in Pietermaritzburg, but these are not their buildings, these are our buildings. So there is Turfway Park. It's a very imaginative name for the racetrack. Turfway Park is the racetrack. And then the zebra and other horses ran up and down in front of this. And it was filled with extras, obviously. That's a scaffold construction. If someone's going to ask me about the safety, it's put up by a scaffold building company with their engineers, and then we clad it to look sort of Kentucky. But it's actually Maritzburg. I'm trying to show you the whole range of what it is that you might be working on. And then I'm going to talk about what you specifically will be doing to get to this, which is a little part of it. You're not going to design them yet. And now this is a job that was very interesting. This is a job called Laconia. It's actually made for the BBC and German television. I don't know which channel. And it was a story based on reality. Again, it's the fantasy version, but based on reality of a German submarine in the Second World War that sank a British ship off the coast of West Africa and then decided to rescue everyone. So that's the true story. And it rescued everyone. It took them on board and towed the lifeboats, and then got bombed by the Americans. It's a complicated story, but we needed a World War II submarine, full size, so we built that. And that's out at sea, and this is completely seaworthy. So we built that to be towed, and the reason for that is that if we could have put an engine in it, but that would have taken 3 years to get the license for an engine vehicle, so we didn't do that. So this is a towed thing. It is made of steel, or mostly of steel. It is made to look exactly like a Type 7 German U-boat. Now, in this case, the art department, to be honest, had very little to do with this because we were literally copying a real thing. So we just got plans of the real thing and made it. And so this isn't specifically an art, but other parts of the set were actually designed. This submarine actually could go up and down, not completely submerged, but it could go up and down because we had pumps and other things. But I'll show you the interior as they're coming up. So this is the submarine, just a closer-up view. It would have been nice to keep the submarine, but to keep the cost down, we built it out of thin steel, which wouldn't have survived very long, so it was scrapped. It's a shame, because it was a beautiful, looked completely real. People were complaining there was a submarine in the harbour. But that's what it was. And then there's a view that somebody took, nothing to do with the movie. I think it was some plane flying over, and they sold it to us as that there's a submarine in the harbour. So more of the same. It's getting quite boring. So this is the ship that the submarine sank. This is actually built in a car park in Sea Point because we wanted to look out at the sea. And those cloths are designed to hide the rocks that were in the foreshore, so it wouldn't look convincing. But from lots of angles, it looked like we were in the middle of the ocean. It's part of set layout, set design, part of working out where to shoot things, why to shoot them there, etc. There's the designer in the middle. His name is Knut. He's from Berlin, and he was a happy man. There he is again. And then these are the interiors of the submarine. Again, much bigger than real submarines. We actually went on board real submarines. They are minuscule, they're horrible, they're claustrophobic. You don't want to be on a submarine. But in terms of actors and banging your head and cameras, we oversize things. It happens a lot. Now, this is part of the same job. This is Strandfontein Tidal Pool. Some of you may know where that is. It's on the False Bay coast. And we use it because we can drain it easily, build in it, and then fill it again to fake the sea. This was a section of the hull of the ship, and this is another bit of submarine. In this case, it's entirely built of timber that was shot not close like that. We were just using that as a painting platform, but shot sort of with a lot of smoke around it as nighttime on a submarine. So we didn't have to go out to sea. The other submarine went quite far out, like a few kilometers out, with the assistance, obviously, of the whole marine department, which we'll get to, which is on movies too. Okay, this is called Bloodshot with the extremely talented Vin Diesel. And this is an action movie. This is a tunnel that was supposed to be, which actually was shot in Budapest in Hungary, but we had to build a section of it in a warehouse, I can't remember where, Clive Pollick or somewhere. And there was a lot of action in this tunnel. There was a big battle scene, or shootout, huge shootout actually. All the tiles on the walls were built to explode and without hurting people, so they are some real tiles, but a lot of effect tiles we built. And so this is, I think it was a 70-meter long section of tunnel, and it was, when they shot it, it was full of vehicles and smoke and explosions and gunfire, etc. There's the outside, just to show you how it is. So it's a timber frame that's then clad. And then this is, in Bloodshot, there are labs where they give Vin Diesel his special blood that makes him into a Superman. And this is the interior of a lab. You can see it's highly polished floors, just to give you. Then this is the training gym for the Supermen when they're made in the lab. And so we had to build a swimming pool on stage, which we do a lot of. So this is a deep pool, 3 meters deep. You can swim in it. The water's heated. It's a perfectly real pool, but it's actually made of timber, steel, and glass. And we do a lot of this construction, where we can hold the water when we need to. And there's more high-techy looking stuff to show a different range of work. This is the table where they worked on him. Now, in this case, we've got sets that are above sets with huge glass windows, so you can walk above this. This is very super thick, super expensive glass that you can walk on, look down at Vin getting his blood transfusion or whatever was happening to him there. So this is Maze Runner, the second Maze Runner. This was a very beautiful set to build, very complicated set, as you can see. These are the labs in Maze Runner where they're looking for the cure for whatever disease makes them into zombies or whatever they are. Again, not talking about the script, but this is a very complicated set. It's got many different materials all having to meet and blend together. And these are, quite good pictures, actually. I think they're stills from the movie. But that shows the more high-techy finish that we have to do quite a lot. Now, this requires much more complex drawings than the drawings I showed you earlier, because this is highly detailed, and we can't build it without every little bit being worked out very specifically. So in this case, the drafting, the detailed, more architectural set design is much more important. And that does vary for different sets. That will be covered in our course when it's more appropriate. This is a set that was probably drawn more on computer than by hand, because it's the sort of thing you can draw more easily on computer. But others, we don't need it. And you can see the idea. We use a lot of expensive materials that aren't normally used in buildings, materials that would be used on the outside of buildings. This is clad with all sorts of fancy aluminium plating and stuff. Now, often we will use it not the way it was intended to be used, just because we like the surface finish of it, and then we'll put it into the set, because it makes a high-techy looking thing like that. So this is a combination of concrete, steel, plastics, aluminium, etc. Lots and lots of lights. Now, the lighting is not done by us. There's a whole lighting department, as you probably know, in movies, and there's a practical lighting department in set decorating that work with them. We provide the spaces for them to put their lights, but we don't do the lights. I have done it sometimes, but that's not what we do mostly. But in this case, this whole set is wired everywhere. There are wires all over the place leading to all sorts of effects and LED lights, etc. Now there's another set from the same movie, Maze Runner, and everything's real except the view. The view is simply a blue screen. The blue screen now might be the newly coming in virtual wall, but it's a view outside a window that isn't real, obviously. Now, we do that in quite a few ways now. There are things called translights, which we'll talk about, which are essentially giant printed images on a sort of plastic. There are blue screens, there are video walls, there's all sorts of ways of doing it, but in this case it was, I think, a translight. And in this case, they want to do it with a translight so that when they've got the shot, it's in camera, it's done. They don't have to go and change it in post-production. And then everything's built, including the sculptures, which I think was subbed out by Set Deck to somebody who makes sculpture. More of the same, more of the same. Some cases, on this set, for example, there are lots of electronically opening doors for real, where we bring in expensive equipment and attach it to doors, and we have to open it with a remote. It's all super high-tech. The sort of stuff you see on the computer screens is done by a different department. It's part of the art department, graphics and digital. It's part of the art department, but it's not part of me. And then they will do the stuff that you see on screens, which is obviously a whole different skill. Yeah, this is just lots of different things, just to showing you the sort of range of work we might have to do. This is from a movie called Doomsday. Don't know what happened to it. These are tanks that we built from scratch, armored personnel carriers. Supposed to be slightly futuristic. We built everything, the substructures, the engines, you name it, we built it. Okay, they drive through walls. They can do what tanks do. I think they've gone to Universal Studios now. But and then this is in the workshop. That's vehicles we built for a Prada commercial a few years ago, where we had to build sort of Mad Maxy sort of things. So we built that, the sculpture on it, the bike. We built all of it. This is just a rockwork sort of medieval tower for a Viking movie. That's a thing for a German movie. But this is a train that in different versions for this movie had to drive on tracks. It had to be motorized. It had to do lots of things. But at one point it had to float, which is doing there. There it is on tracks in the Philippi Dunes. So it's built from scratch. There we go. Thing of beauty. Machine gun preacher, ruined, destroyed buildings. We do a lot of this sort of construction where we're doing bombed out or destroyed or post-attack or whatever it is. In this case, it's not being blown up. These are just various different sorts of textures, finishes. That's very long ago where we built a village, I think for a commercial in Namibia. Another tank in the Strandfontein tidal pool, just showing you sort of how the tidal pool works. If you get the right view, you look like you're looking out to sea. That's not quite the right angle, but you get the idea. More Mad Maxy vehicles. And these things have to work. So we build lots of cars and boats and things. This is a movie we did last year called Around the World in 80 Days. It's a famous book. I think it's Jules Verne, but it was made into a series by the British TV. I don't know which. And that's not a set. So this is interesting because this is a place in London they wanted us to copy, and we would have copied it. But when we did the costing to copy it, it was so expensive they couldn't afford it. Because you can see it's full of immense detail. So we didn't copy it. I'll show you what we did instead of copying it. These are all the reference pictures. Now but what is interesting is this is the sort of stuff that we need, this sort of reference from real buildings that we can then turn into sets. And then this is a concept art view of a set that we are going to build, which we will see in a minute. And I haven't talked much about concept art. We will talk about it in the course. But concept art is the initial images that the art department or the designer produces to work out the look for the movie. It isn't really stuff that we're actually going to build exactly like this, but it's the concept of what it should look like, which is then going to be approved by whoever needs to approve it. And I mean that because there are different bosses on different productions. And then those are the references that we were given from real places in the Arabian Peninsula in the 19th century. And that's where they got their design from, and it's where these sort of are the references. Now, these are important to understand because this is the sort of stuff we need a lot of. We need pictures of what it actually looked like and what you want us to make. More than we need detailed drawings. It's very hard to draw an organic building on a CAD program or another because there's nothing straight, so it is really hard. So actually in this case it's more useful to have sketches and pictures rather than organic, actual drawings. And then this is a set that we were going to build on. This is a set once built by us and then worked over by someone else. And then at the top is what they want us to turn it into. So when we arrived, it looked like the bottom, and then we want us to turn it into the top. Before it looked like the bottom, it was 5 other sets. And the same when we arrived, it looked like the bottom. They want us to turn it into the top. Same with this one. That's what it looked like at the studio. That's what it's going to look like when we're finished at the top. Same with this one, a Chinese street, which is one of the old medieval streets. When we redress it, it needs to look like the top. So these are concept art pictures. The first I've shown you, really. In some cases, we could build straight from them, but usually this is a part of a process to get to the building. Same, more concept art. It's literally taking different programs, probably Photoshop, etc., adding stuff to existing pictures. Not everything. This is Raised by Wolves. It was a thing we did for 2 seasons, originally directed by Ridley Scott, the actual TV show, later by other directors. But he started off directing it, and a lot of the look was set by him. And I wish I'd put them in the right order because they sort of... But this shows a tank we built. Now, in the series, the tank isn't supposed to have wheels. It's supposed to hover. It's a futuristic hovering tank. But obviously, we can't make a futuristic hovering tank that floats this... Well, we could, but when it didn't. A magnetic floating tank. So we made one on wheels. I won't go into what the wheels are. They're of a very funny vehicle. It's a forestry vehicle. But it was supposed to lift up and then drive around. So this is what we made, which is based on designs which I think we'll see later. There it is in situ on location. It's a big thing. It's about 9 meters long, and it drives around, and before it drives, it raises up and drives around. These are interior spaceship sets that we built. For those of you who may have been into the Good Hope Center, the ceiling is the Good Hope Center ceiling. The reason is that Ridley Scott absolutely loved that building. It's from a very famous designer from Italy, I think, who built a lot of Brasilia. And he happened to, I don't know how he ended up here, but he built the Good Hope Center. And so Ridley had heard of this building, loved it, and wanted to make a spaceship that didn't look like most spaceships. He wanted this sort of almost concrete spaceship. But we had to make it look more spaceshipy. So we built the pods. These are obviously, whatever you call them, life support pods. Now, we're on another planet. And on other planets, they don't have the same trees we've got or plants. So how are we going to do that? Well, we can do a lot of it in CG, but we can't do everything. So we had to build a lot of it, and we did. So we came up with these plants. Now, in many cases, these are giant versions of little succulents. We got little succulents, showed them to him, and then we made them way bigger, 10, 20, 30 times the size, 50 times the size. So these are made by us, sculpted by us and copied. And they make, as you, well, they're not in order, but anyway, they're back to the pods. Tree we had to make for the same. These are, otherworldly. We built all this. He liked baobab trees. We showed them to him. We made those. They're not real ones. And then we put these plants in, and then this is us putting... So what I'm showing here is the other side of what we do, which is not buildings at all. It's making things that look like plants or making landscapes. All of it is within the scope of what we do and what the art department do. It's that... I mean, in real life, these are succulents this big. There's a spaceship we built. That spaceship, we called it the Whistle. Thought it looked like a referee's whistle, but anyway. It's got hydraulic doors that open and close, blah, blah. Now, this is the landscape we built at a farm called Lawrenceford. We cleared 30 hectares of bush, literally 30, with bulldozers. Looked like it was a massive operation. Then we made a sort of off-world landscape. We put in these rocks and plants and planted thousands of aloes, and these are the characters digging crops, as it were. So that's entirely made by us. The mountains not, but the whole landscape. Interiors of spaceships for that job. There's the inside of the Good Hope Center as it looked when we made it a spaceship. There's the tank again, there's the whistle again. Whistle, whistle. There's another spaceship we made. This is actually on a gimbal, which is, we do those as well, which are mechanical devices to move, shake, or would rock sets around. We do. Now, we are unusual in the world at doing it. Most construction departments don't. Mostly it's done by special effects, but we do it in this case. I want to talk about I think it's important that you understand what you might be getting into in terms of, are you going to make a living? If so, what sort of living? Is it going to support your family? Is it going to support you? All of those questions, which are obviously real and concerns for everybody. And so I'm going to talk about a possible career trajectory. And the rates I'm going to show you are real rates. They are current rates in Cape Town for art departments. And they do vary. These are rates on the sort of jobs I work on. I think the rates on small local jobs might be less, but I really don't have first-hand knowledge of that. I don't do those jobs. But these are pretty normal rates for with the people I work with. And what I tell you are the time frames. They vary too. You might jump a rate. You might jump a grade if you're really brilliant, or you might not. Or you might find someone who really likes you and wants to take you on the next job and promote you. I can't talk to that because I don't know you at all. And what I will say is that if you qualify in the art department, you will get the opportunity to go abroad a lot, meaning you'll get the opportunity to go abroad on jobs based here, but also if a designer takes a liking to you, he might take you on his next job in Hungary or his next job in South America. And I've been all over the world with movies, and it is true that this is what happens. But it's not a given, and obviously it depends on which passport you have. In some cases, it doesn't matter which passport you have because they'll get you a work permit anyway. But you can, if you qualify here, you will be qualified anywhere. Let's assume you do the course. And what happens after the course? Well, after the course, which is about 12 weeks, we'll try and get you onto movies that are starting up. And that depends on what movies are starting and when they're starting. And if you start, you'll start as a trainee set designer or drafter. They're different phrases. I prefer set designer, and that is the more traditional expression. But they tend to be called draftsmen now, which I think is wrong. But anyway. And how long will you be there? Well, you'll be there 1 or 2 years, and maybe a bit less, and maybe a bit longer. And what will you get paid? Well, right now you'll get paid something like 5,500 to 6,500 rand a week, and on top of that you'll get fed. But, and it's very important to understand, but you will not get pensions, you will not get medical aid, you will not get all the things that you'll get if you go and work for a bank or an insurance company or someone else. That stuff doesn't exist for us. You will be covered by insurance while you're at work, and if you get injured at work, which is highly unlikely in the art department, but if you were, they will cover your medical expenses and stuff. But you won't have that, so you will have to provide that for yourself. So it's important to understand that because a lot of jobs do provide that stuff. So although the pay is quite good, there are disadvantages. When I say they'll feed you, I mean that. They'll either give you food or give you extra money to buy your own food. But they're generally catered. So then after you've been a trainee for a while, you'll be a junior set designer or a drafter, and then you'll get paid more, as you see, 8,000 to 10,000 rand. And that's now. In a few years, of course, that generally goes up most years. Set designer, drafter, fully qualified set designer, who may never be anything but a set designer, depending on their ambition and their skill, could be up to 15,000 rand a week right now. But with ambition and skill and application, you'll then become a junior art director on 16,000 to 20,000 a week, and you might not have to be very old to be there. That could be after 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And then you'll spend time on set, where you will be involved in all the other departments who work and understand what they do. It's really important you understand what other departments do. It's something that's lacking at the moment in art departments in our countries. They don't know what other departments do. And I'll talk about that in a minute with the course. Then you'll become a full-fledged art director. And when I say 1 to 40 years, sometimes that's as far as you're going to go. Either because you don't want to go further, because you don't want the responsibility, or you haven't got the skill, or whatever it is. For some reason, you won't go further. There are lots of people like that who don't want to be anything but an art director, because with the more money later comes a lot more responsibility, time spent on the job, and expectations from you. And then you could be a supervising art director. What these people actually do, I can't explain in this course, it's too much, and we will explain on the course, but they have different functions. And generally the function follows the previous job, but it's more. Supervising art director, as I say, is quite a serious job, and I say 1 to 40 years. It's not a joke. All I mean is that could be whatever. Where you end up. That's the top of the thing. So I'm going to talk about what we intend to teach you on the course, and who might be teaching it. Hello, Philip. And who might be teaching it. I'll be teaching quite a bit, and my friend Jonathan Healy, who's not here but did a lot of the drawings you saw, he'll be doing a lot of the teaching of the actual drawing, set design. But there are lots of other parts of it. So it'll start with general subjects, and those are literally introduction to the course and practical matters on the course. In other words, those are the times where we tell you that this is where your pencils will be, or this is what you've got to do today, or that's all I mean. So when you see a course schedule, if it's that colour and it's general, it's practical matters. It's not study matters, if that makes sense. I know it's obvious, but I just had to do it that way. Right, now, this is extremely important. And to me and Jonathan and the people at Netflix who are sponsoring the course, because they realize this is actually quite a lack at the moment, we're going to teach you quite a lot about filmmaking, not as it relates to the art department, but also generally how movies are made. And as I say, general and specific aspects of film production, over the overall view of how movies are made, and then what each department does. Now, to do this, you'll get general talks, but you'll also get specific talks from those departments. So the best people we can find in the country in that department, in visual effects or sound or makeup or hair or costume or whatever it is, or props or set deck or production, we will bring them in, they will talk to you, and you can hear from them what they do and how it relates to the art department. Because if you don't understand that, in my opinion, you can't be good in the art department, because we're part of a team, as I say. And then, as I say, general info on their departments and their relationship with the art department. And we will start with the art departments, because that's where you're starting, and we'll move on to the other departments. And as I said, at the bottom, it'll be working HODs, and we will spread those courses through those talks through the course. We're trying to keep the course entertaining and keep your interest, so we don't bore you to death, because a lot of it's going to be hard, plodding work that you have to do. Right, again, very, very important is to understand why we're doing what we're doing. So we're going to have a course on script and budget overview, which will be an introduction to how you read scripts if you're in the art department, which is a different way than you read them if you're in the camera department. What are we looking for in the scripts? What actually presses our buttons? What makes us do stuff? What informs our decisions? What produces designs? What makes us do what we do, and what makes us understand why we're doing what we're doing? And we will read real scripts, and we will relate them to. We'll read scripts for jobs that we did and show you how they related to what needed to be designed and how that was designed and then how that was built, so that you get right the way from reading the script to the finished set or finished place. And we will do set design projects based on full or partial scripts, where we will set you the task of designing sets based on the scripts that we're reading or bits of script that we're reading, and we'll expect you to produce sets that have relevance to that. Now, obviously, we'll teach you how to do that as much as we can, but that's so that you can relate what you're doing to scripts. Now, I must say that most trainees coming at the moment who have not done this course know nothing about this, and will stay knowing nothing about this through their careers, which is quite flabbergasting to me. And when we have conversations about why we're doing what they're doing, they don't know a clue, really. They've just been told to draw a house. What's the house for? I don't know, it's a house. We can't have that, actually. It's just wrong, it shouldn't be, and we're going to try and change it. And then we'll look at movie budgeting. We can't give you a lot on that, it's too complex, but we'll have producers talk to you about how they approach budgeting, and then we'll be more specific with the art department. How do we get to figures that we need to spend? How do we work that out? Because it's also important when you're designing things, particularly when you're in charge, but less so when you're a junior in the department, that you're not designing stuff that's just totally unaffordable. It's a waste of everyone's time, your time, my time, everyone's time. So we will try and avoid that if we can, by teaching you what we're looking for. But we can't teach you all the stuff that we learned growing up or we've had exposure to. It's impossible on the course. But what we can teach you is how to find information. And I mean how to find it not looking on the internet. I know you all love the internet, we all do. But a lot of the stuff we need isn't there, actually. And if it is there, you have to buy it, which you can't afford to do, or you have to get a watered-down version. So we need to teach you about research methods. And we're going to set projects for you so that you understand the research methods. At the same time, there is stuff in your environment that is useful. We can go on field trips to interesting buildings. We can go and look at stuff. We can go to museums. We can teach you as much as we can about periods of history, about styles of architecture around the world. And we will bring in outside experts to talk about that, from the film business, from architecture, from varsity, wherever, to talk about specific periods of design which we often refer to in the movies. For example, We use a lot of Georgian architecture, which may mean something to some of you and may not, but you need to know what it is. We use it a lot in movies. We use a lot of other stuff. We use a lot of, we actually do quite a lot of African villages, so we need to talk about generic and specific styles of construction around Africa. We do quite a lot of that, partly because we're based in South Africa, but partly because it's a current trope that's quite popular. It may not be for long, but it is right now. And so we need to give you really methods of research, actually, is what I think is the most important. How do you find what you don't know about? And you need to understand that you need to ask questions. You need to be inquisitive. You need to have a curious mind. The other thing we need to do, or you need to do in the art department, and it's combined with my department in construction, is that we need to lay the sets out when we build them. So say, for example, I'm going somewhere to build whatever, a town, a village. Well, we need to lay it out. It means physically mark on the earth where we're going to put things. Well, that's a skill you have to have. You have to be able to do that. You have to be able to mark with pegs or mark with tape or mark somehow. And so that we can physically then build. And the same goes on sound stages. Stages, we don't call them studios, we call them stages. And on stages where we have to mark where the set's going to go and why the set needs to be put where it needs to be put. And that relates to all the other departments, which is why it's, again, critical to know what the other departments do. Because we might have to put a set somewhere because there's sparks, the electricians need it there for a reason, or special effects have to do something. There's 100 reasons why we have to put something where we do it. We're going to do the introduction to CAD for set design. Now, I know some of you have studied CAD or are studying CAD or whatever, and that's great, it's helpful, but we're going to assume that you know nothing, because some of you will know nothing, and we have to treat you all the same. Plus, the sort of CAD we use and the way we use CAD is very specific to our business. It's not necessarily the way architects use CAD or other designers use CAD, although there are lots of similarities. The most common program we use is SketchUp, the pro version. We use it a lot, but we use lots of others too, Rhino and also Vectorworks and all sorts of things. But most common is SketchUp, and we will teach you SketchUp from the beginning. And I don't know how far you're going to get, because that depends on your skill and application. But you're going to start with the very basics, how to draw a line, a box, a square, how to make a wall, whatever it is. And we're going to teach you that. And the more that you know on CAD, the more of the drawing projects, which I'll talk about in a minute, we will do on CAD. But we can't judge that until we see how you do in the CAD programs. And by the end of it, and we'll be taught by Dave Bastians, who's a colleague of mine, who's a whiz on it. And yeah, as it says at the end, the set design projects on the course will be ramped up as the students become competent. Believe me, if you've done the course, you'll get a job. If I say you're good, they'll believe me, believe me. That's all I can say.
For one to be able to enroll in the course, is it a must? Like, is it crucial for you to know how to draw?
When you finish the course, it's crucial that you can draw. When you start the course, it's not crucial. However, part of the test is drawing, but I need to explain that because obviously we know that this is tricky. The sort of drawing we need is the sort of drawing that some of you would have done at school called technical drawing. That's the sort of, vaguely the sort of drawing we need. And I know that a lot of you haven't done that, so you've no idea about it. But we do require that by the end of the course, you have a certain level of competency in drawing, by hand and on computer. But what we're looking for applicants is the people with a spark. Now let me try and explain this more clearly. Okay, the job really in the art department is to get information to people who need information. Whether that be me to construct the sets, or the camera department to know what the sets look like and how they can move in the set, or the director to plan how to work with the actors, and vice versa, to receive information, to pass that information on in some sort of visual manner, whether that is models, drawings, concepts. So it's critical that you have the ability to do that in the art department, otherwise you're no use in the art department. I mean, that's just a fact. It's no good being a great chef, that doesn't help you in the art department, okay? Nor does being a good drawer help you in the catering department. So, but you do need to do that. But we realized very early on that we're going to struggle to find people who can all draw beautifully. It's not going to happen. But, and this is true, I've built sets from bad sketches on napkins, okay, literally. But as long as I can talk to the person about what they were trying to draw. So the test we set for applicants, and all applicants must do this test to get in, and it's the same for everyone, and we will try and make it, and we will explain that now, as possible for everyone to do it by helping them to do it, is we need this is the test. So you're going to get it in paper, I think, but I'll describe it anyway. We want you to describe a building or a structure near you. So you can't go on the internet and get the plans of St. Paul's Cathedral and submit them to me. It ain't going to work. Okay, you want a building near you, and it can be a very simple building. I do not need you to describe a cathedral. It can be a square hut. It could be the house you live in. I don't care. It can be anything you like. But you're going to describe it to us in a way that we can copy it. In other words, so that we could take the information you give us and reproduce that building. Now you're going to do it in 3 ways, and I need all 3. You can do it with photographs, no more than 6, because I don't want to be swamped with thousands of photographs. And you can take them on your cell phone, and we'll talk about the printing of the photos in a minute, but we will help you with that, correct? Cindy can talk on that, but we're going to help you with printing of photos. So you don't have to worry, I haven't got printer, don't worry, we'll get to that. We need 2 pages of written information. Handwritten is fine, or on computer, we don't care, as long as we can read it. No more than 2 pages, I don't want to read your novel. Okay, I haven't got time to read the novel. It's 2 pages. And a hand drawing. Now, the hand drawing can be super brilliant, or it can just be a basic sketch. It can be the sort of thing you did in primary school. As long as between all 3 we get the information we need to try and copy that building, that's okay. We're looking for the spark. We're looking for people who understand how to transfer information, not people who can draw beautifully yet. Does that make sense? And if you pass the test, and I know some people are going to give us beautiful drawings, and their writing will be crap, and the pictures will be awful, and some people the other way around, and some people all 3. But we've got to set some sort of test, and that's what we think is the right test. Now, I'm going to give you some clues to make it easier. You have to remember that we want to copy the building. So we might need some measurements, maybe. We might need something about what it's made of. You can take pictures to show us what it's made of. And we're not expecting to be able to copy everyone's application, even if they get in to make a building. We're not going to try. But I just want to look at it, and I want to understand that you understand the test more than that you did it really well. I want you to understand the test, and I want you to show us that you understand the test, because that's what we need, the spark, actually. I don't have any other way to put it. If this is not clear to anyone, please ask more questions, but this is the test. So I think it answers your question about, do you need to draw? Not straight away, but you're going to need to draw before you finish. And you're going to have to work hard at it, actually. But I've got the best guy to teach you drawing that I know of, and we'll give you a lot of literature and assistance in books. We're going to give you some beautiful books that show you about drawing and references, and very simple looking books that show you how buildings can be drawn simply. Even very complicated buildings can be drawn with just a few lines.
What is the balance between theoretical knowledge that we'll learn in this course and practical knowledge, and how are these 2 things assessed?
This is a relatively new course, and we are still essentially just putting the final tweaks to it.
You're the guinea pigs.
Yeah, essentially. But the assessment will be fair, and it will be geared towards finding the right people for this position.
No exams, just ongoing projects. We're not going to mark you. There's not going to be the top of the class and bottom of the class. And also, by the way, there is discussion that we would do further courses, particularly, say, on CAD, if people are a bit not catching up quite so quickly on the CAD or the hand drawing. We'll try and design other courses to boost that a bit, post this. But at the moment, this is the first of its kind. I don't know of another one in the world, actually.
Will there also be part of the course of the construction part of actually building
the
large? Okay.
You don't do that in the art department. You do that in the construction department. This is specifically designed to get people into the art department. You need to understand sort of what they do, but you're not going to do it. In an ideal world, you might go off and build a set, but I wouldn't. I mean, that's, to be honest, I'm not expecting any of you to be able to do this for years. This is complex stuff, and then my guys who build sets, they're seriously skilled. They're the best in the world at what they do. So, and you don't need to do that. That's not what we're training you to do. If you want to go into the set construction department, that's a different conversation. That's not this course. I mean, some of you, after this course, might decide you actually want to be in construction or might want to be in set decor. Then you can do that, and you'll be very qualified to go and do that in some way. But that's a different training, a different course, and that's not what we're doing.
I wanted to ask 2 questions. First question, how long is the course?
Sure.
Second question.
Oh,
Okay, second question. I wanted to find out in terms of funding.
okay. Right. So, okay, fine. This is the answers as I know them. The course is 12 weeks, that's for sure. I do believe, and I can be corrected, that all students, and we can't differentiate between students, it's not possible, will receive something like R1,000 a week as a stipend while they do the course. They will not have to pay to do the course. They will be paid while on the course. Oh, and you will be fed while you're on the course too. It's a tradition in the business.
How many people are you targeting to have as your intake?
About 20.
When does the course start?
We're trying to do it, to be honest, in conjunction with a big production so that we can see stuff happening around us. Because if it's at the studio, you will be in the middle of a lot of stuff going on, and it'll be much easier to take you to look at this and that and all the other things.